Welcome to the Reality Therapy Podcast, where the truth will set you free.
Welcome to the Reality Therapy Podcast. My guest today is Lisa Mustard, who's a licensed marriage and family therapist in South Carolina, as well as a podcaster. I'm so happy to have you on, so welcome, Lisa.
Thanks for having me, Ryan. I'm really excited to be here.
So let's start off. Tell me a little bit about who you are, where you come from.
Okay, I will try to make that as succinct as possible. So I am a licensed marriage and family therapist in the great state of South Carolina. I've been fully licensed since 2008. Prior to working in the field of therapy, I worked in public health, health education, and promotion. And then prior to that, I worked in sports marketing and entertainment. And that's kind of an interesting story. I could share a little bit about how I got to where I am today, if that would be okay. Yeah. Okay. So my undergrad degree, I graduated college in 95, which I'm older than probably a lot of the therapists out there listening. And I have a degree in communications. And from my degree in communications, I took an internship with a company called Medalist Sports, which back in the day would host the Tour DuPont, which was a big cycling race here in the States. And from the Tour DuPont, I was an intern, and I went to work and live in Atlanta, Georgia for, I guess it's Turner Sports. And I went from the Goodwill Games. If your listeners remember the Goodwill Games, that was Ted Turner's way to solve the Cold War between U.S. and Russia through competition, kind of like an Olympic-style event made for TV, and I worked there for a little bit. And then I transitioned over to World Championship Wrestling, and I was in marketing. And one day I realized, like, what am I doing with my life? And do I want to be in pro wrestling as a career? And I did a lot of thinking and just looking to see what was out there, and decided to go to grad school and came to the University of South Carolina in 1999 to pursue my master's in public health. And from there, I did that for a couple years. And at the time, was dating this great guy who is actually now my husband. But we went through a breakup. And that breakup was the first time I realized that I needed to talk to somebody. And I went to counseling for the first time in my, I guess I was 26, 27. And that experience just changed everything for me. And after kind of working on myself and going through the developmental process of changing my thoughts, beliefs, actions, I realized that I wanted to help other people do the same. So I went back to school, the University of South Carolina in 2004. Yeah, 2004, and completed my degree in 2006. And I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. And I picked marriage and family therapy because I truly believe that that is where we can make a difference as therapists, is in the family system. So that's the reason I went the LMFT route versus the LPC route.
That is really cool. So one of the things I like to say, I feel like there's a huge divergence into the type of experience people get in grad school when they're learning to be a therapist. And from what it seems like, people who graduated in the last 10 years have a lot weaker academic experience. They weren't trained as well. But prior to that, it seems like there was better training. I'm wondering, what was your experience in grad school?
Oh, my experience in grad school was incredible. I had a variety of professors with a variety of backgrounds doing all different kinds of things. When I did my practicum and internship, I did it at the counseling center at the University of South Carolina. And my supervisor, my director, I was so lucky. He actually trained with Virginia Satir, as well as some other highly revered therapists of their time. And I just got such a wide variety and perspective on how people heal, how people change. It was fascinating and so unique, and not woke at all.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's really cool. It's shocking to me, like, how much the field has changed, because people who went to grad school in the 90s and 2000s, I'm consistently hearing very little, if any, political bias, very rigorous in their training, like very good preparation to become a therapist. It seems like stuff has changed a lot in recent years.
Yes, I mean, it definitely has. I haven't really done much with the program since I've graduated. I would go back every now and then and talk to classes, but I haven't done that in a long time. Every now and then I will get calls from students who want to focus on a certain population that I work with. And, I talk to them a little bit, and I don't take on interns in my job. And I point them in the direction of where they might get the experience to work with. And I work primarily with a military population, so I will, help them figure out where they want to go. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what they're teaching nowadays. I know the professors have all that I had have retired and moved on. So I'm not sure what it's like. When somebody asks me about programs these days, I will point them to programs that are usually of a Christian nature. I feel like they kind of stick more, at least around here where I am in South Carolina. I know some faculty at the college here that is a biblical perspective, and I know their work. I know the kinds of things that they're teaching, and so I point them in that direction if they're interested in going back to school. I really don't have much of a pulse on what they're teaching, nowadays.
So you mentioned like the military background there. I've had a number of military veterans on my podcast, and a consistent theme is how difficult it is to diagnose and talk about PTSD because of how much we've diluted that term. Where, I had to go to a lunch for work or a networking lunch for work or something, and it was traumatizing in the same way that being in an active battlefield is traumatizing. It's hard for a lot of veterans to talk about that because we lump these terms together, but their experience is so unique. Do you see that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I absolutely see that. And I think, social media and these, influencers, quote unquote influencers, talking about trauma, comparing that to something that a veteran has been through. I mean, I don't even have words for that. I just, I don't think they quite understand. I mean, and, trauma is subjective, and everybody's going to have their trauma. I have trauma. Is it the same trauma that, a Marine has been through? No, absolutely not. And it's just subjective. And I think we've lost so much nuance and so much, everybody wants to blanket and call everything a trauma and not really I don't even know what I'm trying to say. It's maddening though from where I sit to see that happen. And I think when I'm working with a service member, that might come up every now and then, but it's not something that they focus on. They don't really seem to care what other people think. They want to focus on their well-being and their family and moving forward. A good bit of them. There are definitely some that that's not the case, but it's an individualized approach. And when I see these influencers blanketing across the board what trauma is, it's hard as a therapist to watch. I think they're just trying to get, people to watch what they're doing and give them likes and give them clicks and agree with them. I mean, they're just looking for agreement, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned like a Christian perspective and faith a second ago. How does that inform your understanding of therapy and mental health?
Well, I think it helps me help my clients. I'm curious about where their faith is, if they have one, if they don't, if they're spiritual or not, their values. Learning about them. It's not about me at all. I mean, I have my values, I have my faith, I have my beliefs, but I don't bring that into sessions. That would never sit well with me if I made a session about me, because that's not helping anybody. I mean, that might make me feel good to kind of get something off my chest, but that's not my role in a therapeutic relationship. So I'm always curious about what the other person is, where they come from, their values, their culture. I mean, I'm asking all these questions to get a sense of who this person is. And if their issue, what they're experiencing and what they're going through, a lot of the times I find that, barring aside, major mental health issues like a CPTSD or something of that, or major depression, a lot of it's just life on life's terms. You've heard that maybe from AA or, addiction treatment. It's like, we're just dealing with life on life's terms and we don't have control over those life's terms. Sure, we make decisions and we are responsible for those decisions. I truly believe that. But sometimes we make a decision and our values, they're not lining up. And a lot of people, I find, that's where the discomfort lies, is they say that they want one thing and they do another, and those things aren't, matching up for them, and they have discomfort and they have questions and they're wondering about how they're going to move forward. And that's really, I think, we're learning about people and their background and their faith and their cultures and traditions and values is really important. We have to ask those questions, I think, as a therapist.
So you can speak to this question as much or as little as you want, but it seems like for many years in our profession, it was just kind of very obvious and common sense that the client and the client's well-being is the primary, if not only thing we're focused on. In recent years, there's been more of a push for a social, cultural, political agenda to kind of rival the client well-being in terms of what we hold as important. What do you see there?
Sure, I see it. I just don't adhere to it. I think it's a bunch of crap. I'm like, that's not who I am as a therapist. And, you know, I laugh because I'm like, that's not therapy. That's not therapy. That's imposing your own personal beliefs on other people. And I just don't buy it. I don't know. I don't care. I just, I see these people come into conferences and, I hear them ask their questions and, I sit with my peers and we all just kind of go, interesting. I wonder how long they're going to be in business. Because I think ultimately, that's what I always wonder is like, are these people earning a living by having these attitudes and the ways that they work? Like, are people coming back to them? Are these people getting well? Like, where's their litmus of, how is this therapy successful for that person? I think I just don't buy it. I don't know. I just don't have patience for it.
I think even if you were on board with all of those political agendas, it still seems odd to bring it into therapy. Like, I'm comparing it to something. If I viewed this as good, it'd be like if I, as a therapist, a substantial portion of my practice is to push breast cancer awareness. Like, my mother's a breast cancer survivor. I think that's very important, but that doesn't really have a lot to do with therapy. Even if you do believe this is a good mission, it's hard to understand why this, what this has to do with mental health.
Right. Yeah. What does it have to do with mental health? I don't. Yeah, my mom's a breast cancer survivor too, but I would never. Like, the only time I could see it coming into practice is if someone that I'm working with says, my mom's going through breast cancer treatment, and I would say, oh, and I would reflect on my experiences and say, oh, I've been through something similar. It was really difficult for me. How are you handling it? I can't imagine being like, oh, well, let me tell you all about my experience of my mother having breast cancer. Like, that's just not appropriate. That's not the place. Anything like that. I just don't, I wasn't trained to do that, and I can't see myself doing that. It's like, that's not therapy to me at all. That's just bad. I don't know, Ryan. Like, I just don't have patience for it.
So a minute ago, you mentioned CPSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder. That's a hot topic about people. I've had people debating both ways about, is that a legitimate diagnosis? Is it indistinguishable from PTSD? Is it really just trying to rebrand borderline? Like, how do you see CPTSD?
I'm not one to like argue diagnosis. I just want to help the, service member get what they need. I don't do the work of the long-term therapy that would, maybe need to be required for somebody dealing with PTSD. So I would be assessing for symptoms. And if the symptoms, of course, are going to fit those boxes, I know that we all want to put it into a code, or we want to put it into a box or a label. And, the longer I do this work and the more I'm around people, it's like, I don't know what I'm trying to say, except those labels are there for a reason. And it's really to get, insurance billed or for them to qualify for services. So it really, that's just the model that we work in. And I don't know what to tell you. I don't research. I don't do research in the sense of, trying to delineate out the symptoms to fit a certain diagnosis. If somebody is dealing with something serious like PTSD as well as a personality disorder, we got issues for sure. And which came first, the chicken or the egg? Sometimes you don't know. And sometimes being in the military, having a adverse event is going to traumatize you for sure. But a lot of the times people don't realize that some of the service members coming in have already had issues in the past. It's not like the military did this to that person. A lot of the times that person had traumatic childhood, and it's just like, layer upon layer of trauma, and we get to a breaking point for this person. So I don't know if I can argue one way or another which one is which. I don't really feel like that's, not that it's not an interest of mine, but I just want to help the person sitting in front of me. I want to make sure they get what they need. I want them to get the treatment that is best suited for their symptoms. And you could look at all these symptoms and then you could clump it into a disorder. Sure, you could look at it. Another therapist could look at it and clump those symptoms into another disorder. I mean, really, at the end of the day, we really want to just help them get better to the best of their ability. So I don't know what to tell you about that. Maybe your other guests could probably speak more succinctly to that topic.
I think a lot of people might get caught up in the minutia of how to define terms and might miss kind of the bigger picture of how we help people.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, all day long. And that was kind of a theme through my training was we need this DSM because it helps us have a framework. But at the end of the day, these are people with human struggles, and we're humans, and we're just trying to understand where they're coming from and help them find a way to get better. And I'm not one to argue the minutia. Like, sure, you're going to probably get that in certain clinics or settings. But I mean, I don't know. I'm not that therapist.
So tell me, tell me about your podcast.
Whew, thank you. So my podcast is called it's called The Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard. It's also called Continuing Education for Mental Health Professionals. And the goal is to provide convenient, affordable, on-the-go continuing education for LPCs, LMFTs, LMHCs, and social workers. I am approved by MBCC to provide, I guess they call it like virtual trainings or at-home trainings or online trainings. So all of my courses they're not live, so they're all recorded, and so they count towards that, that part of your license where you can get some of your credits from recorded trainings or webinars or anything like that. And I have pod courses, which are 60-minute conversations with a clinician who's presenting a topic with 3 to 4 learning objectives. And anybody can listen to the episode because I release it through my podcast feed. But if you want the continuing education credit, then you would head to my website and purchase the pod course from there to get your CE certificate of completion for that CE. So I have about 32 pod courses on there now, I believe. And I also have some other CE courses that I am the administrator for. One with Pamela Garfield Yeager. Wait.
Love her.
Oh, am I right, Pamela? Now I'm like blanking. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So, and she's my friend, Pam. I'm sorry, I got your name mixed up, but I always get that confused with like a double name. But so I have one on there that she created. It's 3 hours and it's intro to gender distress. It's really good training, and it's really, really good if people are looking to really dive into, as therapists, what's going on, even how to talk to your clients about it, how to support families. It's a great 3-hour training.
That's fun. I love Pamela. I met her at a conference recently in Texas, and she's amazing. I tell people that I have a podcast about all the most controversial topics in therapy, and they laugh at me because I don't think people understand how controversial therapy can get. But you just named one that was very controversial. Like, tell me a little bit about that, and have you gotten some pushback for speaking out on some of these issues?
Sure. I mean, I get pushback. I just said recently in a podcast interview, I don't think you've really made it until you've gotten a hater. And I've gotten a couple of haters. Maybe I'll get some more after this episode. I don't know. But I tend to focus on continuing education that is based on objective reality. And so a lot of people don't like that. Therapists these days, they want their agenda to be met. They want to train on, gender affirming care, all that stuff. And I don't get it. Like, I don't understand that, because I will always stick to the example of, if somebody comes to you with an eating disorder and they're anorexic, do we just say, go ahead, yeah, you're right, don't eat, you're right, you're so right, don't eat, you are. And then people say, well, they push back on that because blah blah blah. I'm like, no, that is, I don't play with that. I just think, no, I mean, you're not born in the wrong body. You're not, like, it's not, you can't be, like, you have to learn how to be comfortable in your own skin. And sure, you might be perceived differently, but I don't know, Rand. I don't know. I almost like lose my train of thought, because it just blows my mind that we are here with the world of therapy. But yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. No, I was gonna say I haven't really gotten a whole lot of pushback on Pam's. I did an interview with her on my podcast, and I had one reviewer tell me some negative things about her, and I was like, obviously you didn't listen to the podcast episode.
You talked about objective reality. Yeah. But isn't that offensive because you're not recognizing my truth?
I mean, well, tell me about your truth. What is your truth? I'd love to hear it.
I mean, my truth is that I identify as a dragon, and I think you're looking down on me with your human privilege.
Oh. I laugh because I haven't had that present in a session yet, so I'm not sure. I don't even know where to go with that. And I mean, I think if it was a real session, of course, I would want to learn more. I'd be like, well, where did this start? When did this first start? This thought that you were a dragon first happen, and tell me more about that. I mean, of course, I'm going to be empathic and do all the therapy things, but, and it's not that I'm not, what's the word I'm looking for? Empathic towards people and their problems. I don't even know, Ryan. This is not good.
I think this is a big split in therapy, though, because you're talking about coming from a reality-based worldview. The name of this podcast is Reality Therapy, and I think there's a huge contingent of therapy that's like, well, reality is kind of squishy. We can't really speak to that, but I can affirm and validate your feelings. If you feel like a dragon, then why wouldn't you be a dragon? If I feel like I'm the opposite sex, like, who am I to say that you're not the opposite sex? That's your feeling, therefore it's true for you.
Okay.
And that seems like, I think to you and I, when we go down that route, especially when you start introducing hormones and surgeries, that validation of someone's feelings that are not connected to reality can actually cause a lot of harm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I don't know. I feel like this is such a bad interview because it's just not in me to, like, I don't do this in my world, so it's hard for me to, like, have something to counter with. I'm like, okay, that's what she said. Like, so I feel like this isn't the best interview, and I don't know. I don't want to.
What are some topics that you cover on your podcast that you think are pretty interesting?
Okay, let me pull up my site real quick so I don't forget. Well, I know off the top of my head I can tell you. So I just did one on how counseling men, men's issues, struggles that men present with. There's another one on OCD, a couple on OCD that I think are really good. A couple on burnout and self-care, which are excellent. And another one on working with challenging boys. A therapist comes on and he gives some really great ideas for a therapist to use with families that are working with, boys that might present with some type of behavioral issue, emotional distress. Other topics that are great: when counselor values and client values don't match. That's a good one. Another one on where our focus goes. What we look at, is going to kind of where we put our attention is going to influence how we show up in this world. That's a really cool one. I don't know. There's like 32 of them on there. One on couples counseling, another one on social media use with kids. Just some really great topics that are going to give you some things that you can do in session after listening to an episode for 60 minutes. Really like clinical skills, give you the background to feel like you can, approach a topic. And then if you've wondered if you ever wanted to get training in OCD, the OCD topics kind of give you an overview or a preface of what it might be like to really focus on being an OCD therapist. So if you're not sure, like you're not going to get, full on Gottman training or IFS training in a pod course, but you might get an intro to a topic that would then lead you to say, hey, I would like to learn more about IFS or Gottman. And so you might go look for some more. It's like an intro or a primer to, different modalities.
I love that. There's a few things that I'd like to dig into there. One is the social media use for kids. You got Jonathan Haidt's The Anxious Generation. He's been on a crusade about the effect of social media on kids. What can you tell us about what's going on there?
Sure. I mean, I see it not just in my work, but I see it playing out day to day. And we have 2 teenage daughters, and so I see how social media affects kids. And I think as parents, we shouldn't be turning a blind eye to what our kids are doing on the internet and social media. We need to know what's going on. And I think it's the easy route. I think it's the easy route just to, trust that our kids are doing the right thing, or they're not looking at certain things because we've talked about this or we've talked about that. But I really think there's a lot going on out there that is, we're busy, we're parents, we're working, we're doing our thing, we're trying to raise a family, we're doing cooking dinner, like trying to just get through the day sometimes. And we're just, have faith or believe that our kids are good, and they probably are, but there's so much stuff out there that's trying to get their attention. And they're young, their brains aren't fully developed, and we give them this computer or tablet in their hand, in their back pocket, and just say, oh, good luck. And that's scary. And so I think that parents need to know what their kids are looking at. They need to see how much time they're spending on social media, how that is affecting their mood and their mental health, and then how it's affecting maybe other things that they aren't doing anymore because of social media. I think that's really important. So if your child all of a sudden isn't interested in their sports anymore, isn't interested in their art or their music, well, find out what's really going on. How much time are they spending on social media? What's happening on their phones? What's happening in these conversations that these kids are having? And have some regulations and guidelines, and be the parent that just says, I don't care what other kids are doing. This is what we're doing in our house. I see that a lot in my own world. And it's tough because, kids are going to tell you, well, all my friends have this, or all my friends are doing this. And it's like, yeah, but I'm noticing that your mood gets really down when you spend too much time on social media. So we need to rein this in. We need to talk about it. And I think for ages and stages, it's going to be different conversations, because eventually your kids are going to leave the house and they are going to go off, and whatever they do next, they go into the workforce, they go in the military, they go into college, and they have to learn how to regulate and self-monitor their own behavior, because that's a thing. That's a problem for a lot of kids and a lot of young adults. And, you have to learn how to regulate your attention, because everybody wants your attention for a number of reasons. And, and it starts, you have to start having those conversations, early, elementary school, I think.
So I want to combine 2 topics here. You talked about the social media thing with kids, and you also talked about OCD, and I'm wondering if you see any overlap there, because I see this in other people, and I definitely see this in myself, where there's like this obsessive thought. It could be like, I'm missing out on something, like a FOMO type thing, or I need to be afraid of something, but I'm not quite sure what. This also goes like checking the news, where it's like I have to compulsively check social media or check the news because like there's something going on. I need to know about it. This kind of OCD response to checking social media or checking the news. Do you see that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know if I call it OCD, but I think it's just how we're programmed, as humans. It's just part of our curiosity. It's part of our whatever's going on with our brains. We want to know what the threats are, maybe. I'm not sure. But the way that you handle that is you just stop. You just delete the apps from your phone. You don't look at the news 15 times a day. You don't check Facebook. You just stop. You just have to make yourself stop. And I took Instagram off my phone. I took Facebook off my phone. Sometimes I want to take email off my phone, but you just have to set boundaries for yourself. because I find that when I check social media, and I'm 52 years old, like it affects me when and I didn't, I'm a child, I'm a Gen X, I'm a child of the 80s, and we didn't have that stuff growing up, and so it takes hold of us. It affects our brains somehow. And I'm not the person to maybe explain how that works, but I do see it happening and I experience it myself. So I just have to stop myself. I just have to say, that's not the person that I want to be. I don't want to be looking at my phone when I'm out with my family and we're out doing things. When we're at dinner together, I don't want my phone out. When I'm home with my family, I don't want to be checking social media. And you just have to not do it. And once you set those boundaries for yourself, your mind opens up again and your creativity comes back. And I can't even tell you the amount of creative things that I've thought of in the past couple of weeks because I've taken social media off my phone. And I don't want to be that person, and my husband and I talk about this a lot with our kids. Like, I don't want to be that person who's looking at other people living their lives, watching other people live their lives on an app. And half the time it's just it's not true anyway. People show you the highlight reel, but I don't want that to affect me because I think of all these people are doing all these cool things and I'm a loser or I have nothing to offer. So I don't want that in the back of my brain. I want to be able to I got this whole day ahead of me. How do I want to spend it? I want to read a book. I want to go on a walk. I want to go to the gym. I want to bake something. I want to write something. I want to create something. And if I turn on social media and I start looking at what other people doing, I all of a sudden go, oh, my life is just not I'm not doing these things. I'm not having these experiences. But it just keeps us from going out and experiencing the world. And I see it. I see it so much. It's yeah, I don't know. Did that answer the question? I don't even know.
Very well, very well. Another topic you talked about working with men and working with boys, and that's a big topic that I talk about on this podcast. But I feel like that's kind of something that's missing a lot in therapy, that we don't work well with men and boys. What are you seeing there?
I don't know. I work a lot with men, in my job. So I'm not sure how to answer that question. I don't really work with kids. If you have questions about, working with men.
What do you think are good ways to work with men that we might be missing as a field?
Well, I don't know what other therapists are doing, but when I'm working with a male, my hope is that I'm understanding where they're coming from, what they want to be different in their life, and I'm not one to tell them how to be in this world. I'm not one to say, well, you're toxic or you're too masculine or you're not masculine enough. It's I want to understand the person in front of me. And then I don't know if other therapists, kind of like what you said earlier, it's we put our own agendas on people in front of us. Then if you always are doing that, then you don't know how to work with people. And you don't know what it's like to really be curious about others and to want to understand their worldview and their perspective. So I think that's maybe an issue for all those therapists out there who don't know how to work with men. I doubt they know how to work with women. I doubt they know how to work with couples. It's because they're so busy or they're so willing and wanting to put their agenda on them and tell them how they should be, that they don't really understand that you just meet people where they are and, you help them become the best versions of themselves to the best of their ability. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
know. How do you feel like the therapy profession is not living up to that goal you just stated?
Well, I don't really immerse myself in that what other therapists are doing. So I don't spend a lot of time, pointing fingers and telling people how to do their work. I feel like they're at the end of the day, if they're not getting clients, then that's on something they should be talking to their supervisor about that. Maybe what I'm doing as a therapist isn't working. I don't know. I'm one for self-reflection and holding a mirror up and saying, what am I doing? What could I do better? What could I do in with people? Did my own issue come up right then and there? Did I not recognize that? I don't know. I don't really know what they're doing because I'm not a activist, I guess, is what it comes down to. And I know there's a lot of therapists out there that you've had on your show, and they feel called or compelled to kind of point out what's going on in our field right now. And I guess, well, I understand that, and I feel like that's something they feel called to do. I feel called to just be the best version of myself to help people and to work on my trade and my skills and my therapeutic skill set, and kind of just do the right thing, because sure, I want to rail against the craziness out there, but but I also want to do my job, and I want to do it well, and I don't want to hate this profession. And I don't know how else to explain it, except I'm glad that there are people out there who want to speak up and who want to go on shows and, have this big audience and, stand up and be that person. And I do think it is time, I think people need to be called out, and I think that the way the field is going. But I also feel like it's going to self-correct. I feel like at some point it's going to implode on itself because people are not going to get better. Insurance companies are going to be like, we're not going to keep paying for this if this person isn't getting better, if this is the issue, because the clinicians aren't skilled enough. And I also think that AI eventually is going to help kind of weed out these really poorly trained therapists. Because I think at some point, and this is just, my hypothesis and my guess, and I've talked about this with some other therapist friends, is I think at some point we're going to get to the point where there's going to be some type of FDA-approved therapy bot, and I think there's already something out there that is already being worked on for people who maybe not have like major mental health issues, but, might go to therapy for a handful of sessions and we want to use their health insurance. I think at some point there's going to be some type of AI that's going to take the place of those types of therapy or those types of, lower level mental health issues like breakups or stress or, smoking cessation. Like I think stuff like that is going to be eventually taken care of by an AI. That's going to be the first line of defense for insurance because they're going to want to cut costs. They're not going to want to pay insurance. Pay counselors for. I mean, this is just my guess, but I think that this is probably coming at some point, and so those therapists are going to be out of jobs because I think we're going to self-correct at some point. I think we have to. We will because insurance isn't going to want to keep paying for this BS.
That's so interesting you bring that up because I've heard a lot of therapists talk about, kind of warning against AI and like how bad it's like AI therapy, how bad it's going to be and it's not going to be effective and you're missing the human connection. And I understand that criticism, but also, I think there's so many problems in our field combined with the fact that none of us therapists can compete with $0 per hour that AI is offering. But what do you think? Like, should we be worried about that?
I think the clinicians who aren't very skilled should be worried about it. And the ones who don't have a good niche, I think they should be worried about it. Yeah, absolutely. Because you're right. I think there's going to be, you see it, like I have a friend who's she's a therapist and she's very much on the pulse of what's going on with AI. And I feel like when I want to know something, I go straight to her. I'm like, what do you think about this? And, there are jobs out there now. I think it was it OpenAI is testing some type of therapist. I can't remember. She sent me an article and I can't locate it now, but I'll look for it after we're done recording and see if I can find it. But and then what they're doing is therapists are on the back end, kind of like reviewing what is happening with this, therapy bot or whatever, and then they're reviewing all the conversations. I could have this wrong. I'm just trying to go from memory. But so there are jobs, I think, for therapists that would be on the back end of this. Like they're kind of just like keeping an eye out for maybe, some type of SI or HI or, things like that. And then they would intervene and say, you need a higher level of care. Like this is the next step. But I do think it's coming. And do I agree with it? No, but we can't stop it. And, China's going to do it. So we gotta, we have to be there with our competition, I guess, as things are moving. Yeah, I do think it's coming at some point. And I think the ones that aren't skilled and who want to just focus on like all the, non-reality affirming therapy, they're going to be out of jobs. Because, another thing too that really gets me about this whole like wanting to work with the gender affirming and all this stuff, it's like, of course, social contagion aside, it's a really small percentage of the population that really struggles with these issues. What people are really struggling with are feeling connected to others, loneliness, relationship issues, the things that make us human. The people that are really struggling with those things, I mean, I don't think you're going to have enough skilled clinicians down the road to really handle those things. If all we're doing is focusing on these activism and social justice and all that, like, what about these families that are blended families, step families, that there's no...
What are some skills that you think the average therapist needs that might be underrated skills in our profession?
Reflecting back what they're hearing is important. Listening, just listening to the client, active listening. I don't really see new therapists coming out, so I'm not sure like where the skills deficit is with them or for them. But I think not giving advice and just being able to listen to somebody and reflect back what they're hearing and then offering maybe a different way of looking at it is something that is hard for a lot of therapists in the beginning. I know it was hard for me. I would get kind of like a deer in the headlights when something was presented to me. And I think to this day, I still do, because I get a little overwhelmed in session. And that's how I know I'm getting overwhelmed, is when I don't quite know like, what to say next or where to go with it. But it's okay to have silence. And I think that, silence is important in therapy too. And what other skills? Let's see. I think being able to, and it's funny that I'm going to say this, but like tolerate different perspectives, different cultures, not telling somebody, how they should be or what they should think, telling them that they're wrong. Or even nowadays, if somebody's coming in and they're having issues with their parents, an adult having issues with their parents, like, understand that person's value system and their culture to know what to do next. Because a lot of the times I'm hearing is that therapists are saying, well, just cut off relationships with your parents because they were abusive or whatever. So I think it's important to find out about the person's history and their spirituality and their faith to know, well, how does that direct you or kind of speak to you and how you view family? What were the messages that you got growing up about family and importance of family? I think that we don't think systemically a lot of, and maybe that's just my training, but a lot of young therapists, I'm not sure that they think systemically, and they don't see the value or importance of having family maybe, or relationships, or I guess I'm just kind of like off the cuff thinking what I notice. I'm not a supervisor. I'm not a licensed, I don't supervise trainees, and I'm kind of in a silo, I think, of the work that I do. I do have peers that I consult with, of course, but so I don't really see a lot of the new therapists coming out. I think we just, as therapists, I think we are humans and we want validation from our peers that we're approaching something correctly, or am I thinking this all the way through? I don't think putting that on social media and asking in these Facebook groups is healthy, because you're going to get so many different responses. I think it's better and best to have a peer consultation group that you trust and you know you'll get good feedback from, instead of relying on Facebook groups to do that for you. I see that a lot, and I feel badly for these younger and new therapists, because I don't know who's telling them that Facebook is the place to go to ask these kinds of questions, but it's really just it's not that's not what it's suited for. Supervision or consultation, but yet they treat it like it should be. And then you ask a question in a group of 10,000 people, you're going to get 3,000, I don't know, just an example, 3,000 or 500 or whatever different responses. And you're going to cherry pick the ones that make you feel good in the moment versus really challenging you with your, what you're doing in session. And I think we're not doing each other favors or service by doing that. So it's rare that I will chime in on any of those types of questions in Facebook groups, because, I mean, I just feel like that's not the place for it. And I think we have to get away from doing that.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
So I've got 2 questions left for you. And one you may have touched on a little bit, but how do we fix the therapy profession, or what are some steps we can take to improve it?
I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. I mean, we have these CACREP standards. I don't even know what that means anymore. Everybody, who comes out, they want you to have this, be CACREP accredited, but I don't even know what that means. I think we need to look at these CACREP standards. I don't even know what they are anymore. And we have to have some type of, I guess that's why they're there, but I really don't know who sets those or why they're important anymore, because you're churning out or producing these therapists who all they want to do is, rail against the man and the patriarchy and social justice and call you names if you don't fall in line with them. So I don't know. I really don't know how you fix it, except eventually it's going to course correct, because these therapists aren't going to be able to find jobs after their program, and they're going to go back to their program and be like, why can't I find a job? You trained me to be a therapist. And then those programs are going to have to go, oh, wow, that's not what they're doing anymore. Oh, okay. Well, I don't know what it's going to take, and I wish I had a better answer for that. I wouldn't encourage anybody right now to go into this field unless you were, and even I'm hearing from, these Christian schools that they're not even, holding up their standards to some of these, tenets that I'm talking about. So I think if somebody wants to go into this field, I don't know. I don't think now is the time to do it. And there's a lot of therapists that I'm seeing coming out saying that they don't want to do this. It's not what they thought they were going to get into. The clients don't want to hear about their social justice. They want help, and they don't know what to do with them. So I think that these programs really need to take a look at what they're training on and what they're doing. I don't know, Ryan. I really don't know. I think our field is evolving and changing, and it's going to be different in another year from now than it is today. So what do you think? What do you think we need to do?
I think you're right in the sense that kind of the market is going to fix some of these things. If you're not I think any profession, you're in some degree a problem solver, and you're helping people solve the problems in between their ears and help them sort out their lives. And if you're not solving those problems, there's no reason to pay you.
Right.
And then eventually there's no reason for insurance to pay you. And I think eventually we're going to hit a wall really hard. And I see people I've got Abigail Schreier somewhere around here, Bad Therapy, and you got Matt Walsh saying that all therapy is either nonsense or harmful. There's a lot from the conservative side of things saying therapy's bad, therapy's useless, it's a joke. And I'm over here trying to defend therapy, and I'm looking at a significant portion of the field that is falling into the stereotype that they're, presenting. I think there's going to be a reckoning like you're talking about, and I think it's going to be ugly for a lot of us.
Yeah, and I think that, ultimately the goal of therapy is for people to learn some skills, some new ways of being, whatever that looks like for them, some new thoughts, some new, understand their patterns, help them gain awareness. So, because you can, like I say this all the time to my kids, like you can have awareness all day long, but if you don't do something about it, that's where the issues arise. Like you have to like do to be different. You can't just think your way through it. And the goal of therapy in my, what I'm helping is you're aware that you have these issues. You want your life to be different. And what are you going to have to do differently moving forward? Because you can't keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect different results. So that's going to be hard for a lot of people. So they do need to be in therapy for a while because they have to, but they have to buy into that. They have to kind of meet you halfway that I realize that for my life to be different, I have to do different things differently. It can't just be thinking about it, talking about it, venting about it. You have to eventually change something, do something. And yeah, I think that's kind of I don't want to keep a client forever because they're not, then what am I doing if I'm just seeing, it's like, sure, some people you have that conversation with and you're like, I just want to tell you, we've been doing this for 2 years now. You can go to, maybe once every 3 months if you want like a bolster session, you want to come in. But this relationship is supposed to be like helping you become the best you and move on with your life. I'm not your mother. I'm not your best friend. I'm not, this is a professional relationship, believe it or not. And I know that I have, fond memories of therapists that I've worked with in the past, but I always knew that this was just like a temporary help to understand what I'm doing and the person that I am today. And I don't like where I am today and I want to be different moving forward. So how can this person help me become the best version of me? But maybe a lot of people don't know they don't think they can be a better version. And so I think that there are people out there that sure, they're going to need more work and they're going to need more help and they've had histories and experiences along the way that that have created the worldview that they have. But at the end of the day, we are responsible for our thoughts, feelings, and actions, and we can't blame it on other people.
It seems far too common to view a therapist kind of as this paid friend and you trauma bond together. And like it seems just, very unprofessional and very against what I feel like our profession is supposed to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my final question for you is, when you look at society more broadly, what is one issue that we're not talking about enough that we should be talking about more?
That's a good question, Ryan. What's your answer? You tell me yours first.
I thought about this recently because I've been compiling these answers like into, little clips from like, 6 or 7 people at a time answering this question. And I think, what would my answer be? And I think it was Dr. Andrew Hartz who said kind of the existential question combined with spirituality. I think it was like in the 1880s, Nietzsche talked about God is dead and we have killed him. I think it's kind of a metaphor for we stop believing in God. And I think you kind of into this age where it's like we have all this technology and medicine and social media. We have all these things to keep ourselves entertained, and we're more empty than ever. Like we've taken away the God piece, which was like the centerpiece of meaning and purpose in our lives, and there's no amount of technology and entertainment and all this stuff that can fill that hole.
Sure. Yeah, no, I agree. That's such a big question, and that's a really big answer too. I kind of just go back to where I sit and, my experience of being a wife and a mom and a therapist and working with, service members and families. And I think we're all just trying to do the best we can with what we have. And staying aware of that and doing the best that you can every day is something that I think a lot of people don't know how to define that or don't know what that looks like, and we've gotten away from the value of asking ourselves those questions. And a lot of people don't even know what they stand for or what their values are. And I think that we need to look at what are our values, and are we walking in alignment with them? Are we acting congruently in them? Because I can say, I want to be a good mom, I want, blah, blah, blah. But if I say that and then I'm a crappy mom because I'm spending all my time on social media, or I'm watching too much TV, or maybe I'm drinking too much, or I'm fighting with my spouse, it's like, that's incongruent. And that really hurts me. That hurts my soul to think that I'm being incongruent if I know I want to be the best mom that I can. So, and that's what I think therapy is for, is when you find yourself in these crossroads or incongruencies of, I say one thing, but I do another, and I don't like that about myself. But once again, you have to have that awareness. And I think asking ourselves those questions, who do I want to be? What do I want to impress upon my children? What kind of citizens do I want to raise? How do I think about productive, healthy, congruent children. I think that, I guess what I'm getting at is your answer to your question is I think families need to be families. And I think that being a parent will, if you, I didn't know that being a parent was going to be this challenging at all, but it's awesome. And it's taught me so much about myself and about relationships and about marriage and about, I'm going to cry just thinking about it, but I don't think that, I think families really need to focus on their families. And I think that can really change the world. I say that, but of course there are going to be some families out there that are going to do family different, and that's okay. But, maybe as an American family is maybe I should back that up and maybe give that a little bit of a qualifier. And the things that, make this country great, can make families great too. I don't know.
I love that answer. I mean, there's been a number of people I've talked to who talked about the importance of family, and I love the individualism that we have in America, but I think it's become so extreme to the point where you've been isolated from part of the unit that makes you who you are, your family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's really easy to discount with that, with that mindset of you be you, your happiness is everything. I grew up where you honor your father and mother. I don't always like the choices and decisions that they made. And I could tell you some stories. But they're still my parents. And there's so much value and yes, I know there are families out there that have been abused by their parents, and, nuance aside, of course, and I think a lot of the times that's all we see are the bad stories or the sad stories. There's so many stories out there of families that are doing amazing things, and they don't all agree with each other, but they respect each other and they love each other, and they work hard to stay together, even if they don't see eye to eye on things. I mean, heck, that's how it is in my family. I don't know. I feel like saying all this is, this is my world. This is my perspective. I am not somebody who has their finger on the pulse of the therapy world. I just do my job. I go to my job. I do the best I can. And I think if people were more focused on themselves and being the best version of themselves instead of trying to control everybody around them and you should think this and you should do that, it's just work on yourself. Don't necessarily work so hard to change things that are out of your control or to rail against things that are out of your control. You got one life on this planet. And if you want to sit here and get mad at the government and get mad at, things that happened 30 years ago and project them on to today, what kind of living is that? I feel sorry for people like that. So yeah, I don't know, Ryan. I mean, I hope that this interview has been helpful. I feel like I'm not the best person I know you've had Soad on and Pamela, and Andrew, and those are people that I listen to, and I am in awe of what they do. But at the end of the day, I want to produce good continuing education that is based in objective reality and that helps therapists in their day-to-day work, who are doing the good work, who are out there actually helping people with these big issues that, depression and relationship issues and family issues and the real things that are happening, and not somebody who I just can't be in all these worlds, so I have to pick and choose where I want to spend my energy and in doing, as I call it, the good work. And for me, that's in the continuing education realm, and seeing the service members and veterans that I work with, and, working to be the best mom I can and wife, and coming on podcasts like this and hoping that I maybe inspire somebody out there to not to feel so overwhelmed with everything that's happening. Just focus on the good that you can do, and pick your lane and just go for it. I've listened to a lot of your episodes, and I'm like, well, I don't sound as intellectual as those people, and I don't have the research papers to back it up, like with Mia and James and all the other guests that you've had, professors, and so I was real hesitant to come on this podcast because I was telling you, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. But now that we've kind of gone through this episode and we've come to the other side, I'm breathing a sigh of relief, all technical issues aside, and just want other therapists out there to know, you don't have to be, Mia Hughes or James, is it James Lindsay? James Lindsay, or the other professors you've had on to, be the change in our field. You just work on yourself, do the good work, stay in your lane. If you have an idea for something that you think can help people, go for it. I talked to a lady yesterday who wants to start something similar, a podcast with continuing education. And I loved her idea. And I thought, if you think this is going to help your tribe, it's going to help people, then go for it. Because we need more good information in the world. We don't need more Trump supporters are part of a cult. You saw that, oh my gosh. I mean, that's not real. That's not evidence. There's no evidence to any of that. It blows my mind that these people with all these, letters behind their names are creating these educational opportunities. But anyway, I just want to encourage people, therapists out there, if you have an idea, if you want to be the change, then figure it out and be the change. And you don't have to have this huge, social media following or this huge platform. You can make a difference wherever you are, if that's just with the next client that walks in your door.
Well, Lisa, I love this conversation. I thought it was fascinating. I love how thoughtful you are when you wrestle with these issues. I don't want you to in any way downplay your intelligence, because I thought it was very stimulating to talk to you.
Well, Ryan, thanks so much for having me. And I really appreciate the opportunity and the invitation to be on your amazing, wonderful podcast. Thanks so much.